Yo, it's your boy Uncle Pre with another episode of the Unfiltered podcast. This week I have got Jyoti in the studio. I got that right?
Yep.
Got that right. Okay, cool. Sweet. Thank you for coming through today. And I want to give you just a little intro for you to just tell the audience who you are, what you do.
Yeah, thank you. So hi everyone, my name's Jyoti. I'm a yoga teacher, menstrual cycle coach, podcast host, amongst many other things. Where to start with my journey, I guess. I suppose, so I studied psychology at university, then was a primary school teacher, found that to be amazing, but also really difficult, just because of the education system in the UK. And at that time, I was really struggling with kind of, I guess, mentally, in terms of it's such a stressful job. And I kind of turned to meditation, yoga, practicing gratitude, things like that, and naturally went down the path of yoga and found it really, really helped, like the physical practice of yoga. Decided that I just didn't want to be a teacher anymore and was going to go to India and do my yoga teacher training there. So I did that, and it was honestly, without sounding cliche, like the most life-changing experience of my life. It was incredible. Came back, started my business, and we soon after that went into lockdown. So that was great timing, I guess. So I had to really pivot what I thought my business was going to be, which was going to be very much in person, to it all kind of went online. Did loads of different wellness kind of trainings and practices and started studying the Gita and lots of different things. And then, kind of ended up coming across menstrual cycle awareness. And that's how I then studied to be a menstrual cycle coach and kind of incorporated it all together. Started my podcast called Decolonizing Wellness, thinking about those sorts of things. And I guess that's where I am today. So it's a real whistle stop tour. But that's me.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. That's interesting. So firstly, yoga teacher, then coach, then podcast, or podcast in between?
Menstrual cycle coach, then podcast.
Okay, we'll plug all of that stuff in, don't you worry. Let me start with yoga teacher, because Rima came in, she's grounded yogi. We had a good chat in regards to her educating me around yoga and really planted a lot of seeds in regards to things I was already doing, which were forms of meditation I didn't realize, etc. And why yoga?
I think for me it was, like I said, I was struggling kind of mentally in terms of I was just so stressed all the time. I think one thing that being a teacher helped me is to let go of perfectionism. Like all my life, I've always wanted everything to be perfect, to be a certain way, and was striving for this impossible thing that is perfection. And when you're a teacher and you're a primary school teacher and you're teaching children 10 subjects a week, you don't have time to make every lesson perfect. There's just not time for that unless you literally don't sleep. And even then, it wouldn't be perfect. So I had to kind of really let that go. And so I actually trained to be a teacher through Teach First. So they put you in schools in deprived areas. So there's that added layer of these children are going through the most horrific things that you can't even imagine. And then you're there okay, let's do our times tables. That's not really what they need in that moment either. So there's a lot of things that you're battling with. So anyway, I was struggling, and I first turned to gratitude. I'd read The Secret at university. I don't know if you've read that book. And I just thought, okay, I read it again and was I really need to shift my mindset. I'm in such a negative place and I'm not helping myself. I think that's what I realized. So I went through, highlighted the book, wrote some notes and stuff. And what I used to do is when I used to drive to school, I would turn the radio off for the first 5 minutes and out loud say all the things in my life that I was grateful for, and really mean it. To the point where sometimes I'd have tears in my eyes because I was I'm so lucky. I've got all these things, roof over my head, amazing family, etc. And then nothing changed, at school, in my work life, nothing really changed, but my mindset had shifted and I started to feel better, even though the situation was the same. So I really realized the power of that. And, having studied psychology and stuff, I kind of already understood a lot of things, but it's easy to intellectualize things, but to actually put them into practice is a whole other thing. So I think that then led me down, okay, let me try meditation. Really enjoyed that and found that it really helped me to just have space. I think what I've realized as I've gotten older is that I've always overthought overthought a lot of stuff. So actually that meditation was really helpful for me to just have space. And then, yeah, I don't really know why I thought, let me go do yoga. I guess I just knew like it was good for that kind of thing. And that's for like stress and anxiety and things. So there was a really amazing yoga studio near my parents' house where I was living, and I used to go there a lot. And yeah, it really helped. I mean, in between that, I would go to the gym, and that really helped, like just physical exercise and movement. But then I sort of found that obviously yoga and connecting to your breath and being mindful while you're moving and those sorts of things, like I would just leave feeling like I was walking on air. And I knew there was so much more to the practice than I was being taught. I just didn't know what it was because, you know, yoga comes from our culture, from India and the Indian subcontinent. And I wanted to learn more about it and really explore it.
Fair. I like it. And then went to India for how long?
For the yoga teacher training, I was there for about 3.5, 4 weeks, but I was in India for like 5 or 6 weeks. My family lived there, so I went to a wedding or two and, you know, the usual.
And then come back and then just started teaching straight away? Or tell me a bit more about the journey, because I feel like there's a bit of inspiration in there in regards to what's then happened next and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, of course. So I came back and thought, okay, I'm going to do supply teaching and then build my business at the same time. Like that gives me the flexibility. Like, you know, I've still got the skill and I still love teaching. Like I love being around children. Like I think they're amazing. That wasn't kind of the problem. It was all the other things. So I, you know, started applying to that. And then also at the same time, like building my business, like starting, you know, my Instagram page. And what I was actually going to do is a well-being event, like a wellness workshop kind of day of like different workshops. People can come to different ones, explore different things, and they'd get like a really nice lunch and things like that. That was the plan. So I started like working towards all of that. And then I think within about 3 weeks, maybe not even, like we went into lockdown. So I was like, okay, what do I do now? Like I've got no income stream. I've got, like no job. And they weren't then letting supply teachers into schools because of all of that stuff. So they were like really, you know, tightening up on who went in. So doing a bit of tutoring online and stuff. And a lot of like ashrams in India were offering like free learning and things. So I like literally soaked it all in. Like in a way, I'm like so grateful for that time, because I think if I didn't leave teaching when I did, I'd probably still be there now because I'd be so scared to leave. And I'm so glad. Well, I don't know that for sure, but you know, so I'm really glad that I did leave when I did. And then, yeah, it just took a long time. Like, I guess I realized, okay, I can't be doing this on in person, so I have to do it online. So I did like Instagram live yoga classes. I started doing regular classes that people kind of paid for and did over Zoom and things like that. Was working like with the local yoga studio near my house a bit as well. And just like seeing what other people were doing, I guess, and like what could I do, and really trying to like broaden my horizons. So yeah, I've been doing that now for 4 years, which is it's gone fast but slow, I guess. So yeah, I mean, a lot has happened in that time, of course. Like I said, like I then came across menstrual cycle awareness and realized that actually like my menstrual cycle influences so much of my life, and really went deep into that and understood that, started learning about Ayurveda. And also for me, like the piece that I loved the most about yoga was the philosophy side. And like all of that kind of learning that comes from the philosophy and the yamas and the niyamas. So like there's 8 limbs of yoga essentially, and asana, which is the physical practice, is just one of those limbs. So when in the West we're doing yoga and we're just doing the physical practice, we're only doing like an eighth of yoga, which is so diluted. So all of the other parts I just loved so much. So as I said, then I started like studying the Bhagavad Gita, which you don't have to do to study yoga, but I found that so interesting. And I think the thing that happened for me at the same time as going through all of this was really a journey back to myself and my roots, and realizing like who I was. And I think for me growing up, like I grew up in a very white area and was like one of a few people of colour in my school. I really rejected like being Indian and I just wanted to be like my friends. So I just wanted to be white. You know, like we were joking before we pressed record that like I used to say to everyone like my name's Jyoti, but it's actually Jyoti. But I just said it like that because I thought it'd just be easier for them. And it was actually in 2021, I think, that I wrote like a whole blog about this and just started to say my name properly. I was like, actually, if I tell people how to pronounce my name, then maybe they'll try. And it went viral, like it got picked up like by one of the newspapers, like it was crazy. But actually, like that's so important, like it's part of our identity. So I think a large part of this for me has been like an identity piece of like coming back to who I am, like learning to understand and like love my roots, I guess. And I think yoga has really been the path that's helped me do that.
Fair. So you've been, I love it. You've been, you got a hit with a difficult situation, as did so many throughout COVID, and you've managed to still power through. Are you not doing any supply teaching now, are you? Or?
No, I'm not doing supply teaching now.
Now it's just full-time yoga teaching and you're coaching and podcasting as well. So basically you're just full-time an entrepreneur right now, just knocking out.
I do have a part-time job. But
okay. Oh, no, fair.
Yeah, I do have a part-time job, but I do still do this like in every other waking hour that I can.
No, that's mad. That's mad. I like it. I've recently transitioned to now making this what I'm doing now a full-time gig and just seeing what happens on the back end of that. So
congrats.
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens in a few months' time, then we can have a little reevaluation of whether or not it was a good decision or not. But nah, I like it. I like your story. Similarly, with me, when it came to like COVID, wanted to leave to go travel and do some charity work and stuff, and that never fell through because of COVID. And then started my coaching journey, and then here we are 3.5 years later. 4 years, 3.5 years. Yeah, well, 4 years later, nearly now. Jeez, time has flown by. Bloody hell. But mad. With the I don't want to spend too much time like digging into like yoga specifically, but I know you're definitely quite passionate about it, and it probably links into other stuff. But your menstrual cycle coaching, it's very, very unique.
Yes.
Before we describe like what it is, like how did that come about? Elaborate on that.
Yeah, so when I was teaching, like primary school teaching, I realised that I was going through this cycle of like, I'd be like, I hate my job, like I need to leave, I have to do something else. And then like 2 weeks later, I'd be like, I can do this, it's fine. What was I thinking? Everything's great. And like it was a real cycle, and I didn't realise at the time what was happening. And in my head, I thought, I wonder if this is linked to my menstrual cycle. Like I wonder if my moods are linked to my menstrual cycle, or my, like kind of like this thing that I'm going through. Didn't really act upon it. When I was in India doing my yoga teacher training, they kind of mentioned bits about the menstrual cycle. I'd also learned a bit of Ayurveda while I was there, and I saw an Ayurvedic doctor, and the first thing he asked me was about my periods. And I was like, this is really weird. Like no Western doctor has ever asked me about my period. And now it makes complete sense, like why he didn't, But so anyway, so I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. Was on a walk in lockdown listening to a podcast and came across someone who just mentioned this lady's book called Maisie Hill. It's called Period Power, and essentially explained like there's 4 parts of the cycle, the rough kind of feelings and emotions and what happens to your hormones that you go through, your energy levels. And suddenly like I was like, oh my God, like this all makes so much sense. And like another layer of understanding of myself like kind of came through. And then I felt really angry. Like, why haven't I been taught this sooner? Like half the population are going through this and we're not told anything about it. Like we're taught about our menstrual cycles from such a scientific standpoint. And to me, although I knew it was happening inside my body, it felt very distant.
Yeah.
So went down like a real rabbit hole around menstrual cycles and menstrual cycle awareness, and came across this lady called Claire Baker, who has her cycle coach school, applied through a scholarship and got it, which was amazing. And kind of trained with her, and then was a mentor on her program for a few years as well. So that's kind of like how I came to it. And I guess, like it really influences every single part of of you as a person who menstruates. And I just think it's crazy that we live in a world that doesn't talk about it, like the Western world specifically.
Who needs this style of coaching specifically?
I think all people who menstruate, to be honest, like maybe not from me, like there are a lot of menstrual cycle coaches out there. Like it's definitely becoming more mainstream, kind of like the menopause chat, especially. But I think everyone, even if it's not necessarily coaching, just understanding their bodies.
Yeah.
A lot of women think that they're crazy for at least a week every month, but they're not. And the world that isn't set up for us either. So that adds another layer where like the world around us is also telling us that we're crazy.
So when you say you coach people, let's be more specific. When you coach women around whether it's generic menstrual cycles or theirs specifically, I'm just trying to get an understanding of it. Are you somewhat teaching people, or are you holding space for them to talk about things that they're going through? Like, I'm trying to distinguish whether or not what you're doing right now, is it like therapy? Is it educational? Is it advice? Because from my understanding, what coaches do is, well, we hold people accountable to then move forward and take action, and we can be a soundboard, etc. But there's this fine line in regards to advising people and consulting and therapy. And so I just want to know a bit more about that more specifically, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. I guess I kind of call it like life coaching through the lens of the menstrual cycle to kind of try and help it make a bit more sense. But people will come with like anything that they want to work on. So like, for example, I had one client who really wanted to think about fear, and like she was very fearful, and we kind of broke it down. And so what I advise like or encourage my clients to do is to track their menstrual cycles. And I'd encourage anyone to do that who has a menstrual cycle, is to basically like day one is the first day of your period. And then you would write like just a word or a few words about how you're feeling, and do that every day all the way up to like wherever your cycle ends. And once you do that for 3 months, you'll have like all this data on yourself, and you'll really be able to notice patterns in your behavior, your energy levels, your mindset, all of these things, even like your food. Like it depends what you want to look at, you know? Like some people look at like their arguments with their partners, for example, because there's certain times where that might be more prominent than others. So I really encourage, so we'll do that, and then we'll kind of look at that. And to be honest, a lot people already know a lot of this, like it's innate. They just need a space to, you know, like you said, like someone to hold that space, and for them to have that space to unpack it and understand it, and like work towards whatever their intention is. So for this client in particular, it was around fear. So we kind of thought about, okay, when do you feel that the most? Like which phase of your cycle? Is it just one phase?
Right.
Or is it all the time? Because I think sometimes what happens is, because you feel like that for a large part of a cycle, like a menstrual cycle, or let's just say a month, everyone's is different, but roughly a month, maybe you feel like that for 2 weeks, but in your head you feel like that all the time, even though you don't. Like, so like for me, I used to feel really anxious as I came off my period into like my premenstrual phase. My pre-ovulation phase. And so I felt like I was feeling anxious all the time. But actually, when I like dug deeper, I realized it's only for those few days. But in my head, I thought it was all the time.
And that was something subconsciously you just held up there, I suppose, and then probably worked on it. And
definitely, exactly.
Sweet. That's mad. That is interesting, because I've got a number of clients who the topics normally around like relationships, not necessarily romantic but personal, and it when they what I've noticed, and being a guy, and that shouldn't really be an excuse, but being a guy who listens, and I'm just tracking things just based on week upon week, and you start seeing things, especially within the calls, sometimes the emotions are a lot more higher than the others, and it's like my first response in my head is, maybe this is something based around hormones, maybe it's that time of the month, or whatever it is. So I don't want to make more judgments around it, but I start seeing like ups and downs in regards to action that gets taken, in regards to their emotions around more, I suppose, what's the word, more things that hit home a little bit harder. And so it's an interesting thing now you're saying this right now, because it's like, okay, cool. Maybe there's a lot more learning that can be done around this particular area, and how beneficial that could really be. I'm just very, very intrigued into like, and it's not to sound rude or anything. It's more of a case of like, when people ask me, why would I work with you, Pri? Like, you're not gonna be able to help me through my divorce. You're not gonna be able to help me through my marriage right now. You're not married. And I'm like, I've always got an answer to back that up.
Yeah.
And so like the question I want to ask you is, if, for instance, someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, cool, interesting, but why would I want to work with you? What would be your answer?
That's a good question.
Just throw you right in the deep end.
I think with like, if you're going to work with anyone, you need to, I guess you feel like their energy, their approach, the way that they kind of explain things is what you understand, and like it really speaks to you. So I'm not going to be everyone's yoga teacher, everyone's menstrual cycle coach. Like, some people are going to listen to me or like see things that I post online and be like, what the hell? Like, that's a load of rubbish, or, you know, whatever. And it took me a little while to accept that. But actually, like, the people who need to hear what I have to say in the way that I'm saying it, like those are the people who will naturally want to work with me. I think for me, like, I guess, like, as a person, I'd like to think like I'm very understanding and really listen. And I mean, that's what coaching's taught me, like the power of listening. I don't know if you feel the same, like
100%.
to be able to actively listen. And I think it's made me a better friend, a better wife, a better daughter, like all of those things, because I'm able to listen and hold that space and reflect back to people what they've said, and not necessarily offer advice, but be like, well, this is what you said, so this is your advice, so now you need to kind of take that on board yourself, you know?
No, fair. Okay, cool. I know I threw you in a bit of the deep end. With that kind of question.
Sales pitch.
Nah, not even that. It's just more of a case of like, I get intrigued by people that come sit in that chair, or if they've moved me out of this chair because this is their better side and this side over here. I get intrigued when someone talks to me in regards to the things that they do, because I feel like you're very specific. You've got a niche here in regards to the people you work with. And I don't want to make this podcast more business oriented, but it's always interesting to get a real feel for why someone really wants to sit down and talk to you. When I've had guests come on and message me privately to say, Pri, you're not going to realize that podcast that we did, people are wanting to work with me now on the back end of it. So I want to thank you for holding that space. And it's like, I don't really do anything. I'll give you a real chance to just really educate what you do and why you're great at what you do, and why people should still be working with you or reach out to you in regards to the things they're going through. So that was the only reason why I threw that your way. Thank you. No, I really like your page as well. Like, I think the way everything's kind of like laid out, obviously things change within time, but no, I'm a big fan of this. Obviously, it's not something that I would possibly buy into, but it's a case of, if I had a partner who was struggling with something, my sisters, cousins, etc., I've heard stories in regards to their cycles, and I've seen it first and foremost when it all kicks off at home, and it's just like, give someone space or offer them company, etc. So why don't we change this up a little bit and go into a bit more of the educational side of things around the menstrual cycle, because I know that was something we touched upon, how people need to be educated a bit more around this. Why don't you get a bit unfiltered around that?
Yeah, of course. I think, so there's 4 phases of your menstrual cycle, like I said earlier. And we can think, there's lots of different frameworks you can use to work with them, just to help you kind of understand them better. So I really like to use the seasonal frameworks. I think we can all relate to that. We all live through the seasons every year. So you have your menstrual phase, which can be called your inner winter. And that's when you're on your period. So here, like, think about the season of winter, like you're resting, you're more tired perhaps. Like, think about nature, like there's no leaves on trees. Well, on some trees there's no leaves, and the animals are hibernating, those sorts of things. So that's very much like how we want to be, like, as much as possible, be like resting, taking it easy, slowing down. Like, your body is naturally kind of cleansing. So we just want to support that process as much as possible. Then we go into your premenstrual phase, like you're in a spring. So again, if you think about spring and the season, the daffodils are starting to come out, the blossom, you know, you're starting to get a bit more energy. People are like, yes, like the days are longer, the sky's a bit bluer, hopefully, and things like that. So it's a bit more hopeful energy in the air, and very much the same. Like, so when you're on your period in your menstrual phase, all of your hormones are at their lowest level. As you go into your pre-ovulation or inner spring, your hormone levels begin to rise. So you naturally will get some more energy. Sometimes that can feel like anxious energy, like I was having. Then you go into your ovulation phase or inner summer. So this is when, like, biologically you could have a child. And this, you know, again, think about summer, like everyone's out partying or like having fun, still relaxing maybe, but, you know, you're together a lot more. You want to be around people more. Some people, again, like what I'm describing here is like a typical cycle, but everyone experiences it differently. So just a little caveat. So yeah, that's your inner summer. So generally where all your hormones are going to peak here. So this can be like the most energetic phase of your cycle. Like for a lot of people, this is where they'll feel like superwoman. They'll be doing all the things. And this is what was happening to me. You know, I was saying before, like I was feeling like, oh, I want to leave my job. I hate it. Then I was like, I can do this. Like I was definitely feeling like I could do this in my inner summer phase, because you've got like that estrogen, like the rose tinted glasses, I like to call it, of estrogen, where everything feels like rosy and happy and great, and things that maybe were bothering you don't feel like as big a deal now. Then you come into your inner autumn or premenstrual phase, so the hormones begin to lower, and the rose tinted glasses of estrogen are removed, and this is kind of the phase that gets the bad rep from both men and women. So this is where like people will experience PMS symptoms. Some people like headaches and.
Is it premenstrual or postmenstrual?
Pre.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah. So like you might feel like headaches, bloating, and things like that.
All the pain comes through.
It can be, yeah. Also, sometimes when you're on your period, that can also be painful,
Okay,
like cramps and again headaches and things. But some people get them before as well, or just before, not during. So this is when it can be much more difficult. And also this is when, like, I think a lot of people will throw insults at you and be like, oh, is it that time of the month? Oh, is that why you're being like stressy or like, you know, whatever. But I think what people don't realize is that here what's happening is your body is preparing to bleed essentially, and it's getting ready. So suddenly, like, all that BS that you were putting up with before, like you can't put up with it anymore, because you need to be focusing on the fact that you're about to start your period. But you don't realize this, you're going through this, unless you're like tracking your cycle and all, and you're really in tune with your body. And if you think again about nature, in autumn, the animals begin to prepare to hibernate. The leaves start falling from the trees. So it's very much a time of like editing and letting go. So if we can do that and we can start to slow down, then when we go into our period and our menstruation phase, it's going to feel a bit softer. Now, obviously, the world that we live in isn't set up for this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, 28-day or, you know, roughly cycle. It's very much set up for like the 24-hour cycle, the circadian rhythm, which is the cycle that men run on, whereas we run on much more of the lunar cycle. Like our menstrual cycle mirrors the moon. So yeah, that's like a real whistle-stop tour of the cycle.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. So let me get this right then. After autumn is then when the period starts?
Yeah, so then you'll go back to inner winter menstruation and it all starts again.
Okay. Right. Now, because I'm just trying to look back at like previous relationships and stuff where like partners have been, I wouldn't say somewhat, I think needy is probably the wrong word to say, but like more affectionate and more, and is that like, is that, I presume that's part of the summer at the peak times, I would say, or is that I'm trying to just make it all make sense to me, because
of course.
one thing I feel like I don't understand when it comes down to women and their menstrual cycles, and it's like I can even say it first and foremost in regards to like family. Like I'm a very banterous character within my family dynamics, and that's even looking at cousins and stuff, but I would like to be in a better position moving forward to be more don't want to say the word supportive, but more aware in regards to shit, this is going on right now. Okay, cool. Let's not press that button, or let's not think that's too funny right now, because for whatever reason, something might be going on based on whatever season it is right now. Let's just take a step back and be a bit more aware and be a bit more empathetic in regards to this versus just being yourself. And it's not like me trying to put a filter on it. It's just more being conscious, I suppose.
Yeah, just being mindful, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. I think everyone's different. Like when you might feel like you need that more like love and attention compared to when you don't. I mean, naturally, from an evolution perspective, like when you're ovulating, because that's when you can produce offspring, people will feel their best. Like if you took a selfie in each phase of your cycle, you would probably prefer the one in your ovulation phase. And like studies have been done on that, or even studies have been done the other way around, where men will look at women's pictures in different phases, and it's ovulation where they're the most attracted to them, because from a biological perspective, you know, that's evolutionary psychology and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that you are already thinking like, okay, how can I put this into perspective, like in my own life? Because yeah, I think it's so important. Like I said, like half the population do menstruate. So how can we kind of make workplaces more inclusive for this? Because, you know, like for me, like when I'm on my period, like my brain isn't working in the same way as it is like a few days later even. So I will be a bit slower. But then a few days later, like I will very much make up for that type thing.
I agree. You didn't even think of it from that perspective, to be honest. And it's like, I wouldn't know what workforces and employers are doing to incorporate that. I suppose there's something... I'd like to think there are things in place. I really don't know, but it's an interesting topic to think about, if there aren't support systems in place for something that physically can't be changed. My only question then on that is, and this is going off tangent, but like, can that be taken advantage of if people are saying things for the sake of it? Because biologically they can, but respectfully they can't. So what I mean by that is that like I've had partners in the past who never really suffered from cramps, and some who suffered from cramps quite bad, and there's like that fine line, that difference there. Have you ever come across it in any form of work or any shape of life where people have possibly have taken advantage over the fact that, yeah, I'm going to be starting my period, I'm on my period, but really they're not that? It really doesn't hit them like that. No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I just got me thinking, like, I'm trying to think a bit more outside of the box. Like, you put something in place, and say you put like a support system in place, but people take advantage of many things right now, like sick leave. I know a number of people who call in sick and really aren't sick, and it's just like, okay, cool. It was just purely curiosity.
I think with anything like that, of course, there will be people that take advantage of it. Like that's just the way it is, you know. But like, so like where I'm working at the minute, we get 4 wellbeing days a year as well as annual leave.
Oh,
like,
nice.
No questions asked, you can take it. And I was talking to someone about it, and she was like, I just take them when I've got really bad period pain. Like that's why she's taking them. And then, like again within our workplace, they're kind of saying, completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, there's like menstrual cycle policies in place, menopause policies. But I think, that was it. So people are talking about, if you have a male manager, like, would you feel comfortable telling them why you're off? Or would you just say, oh, I'm not feeling well? Or would you say, I've got period pain? Like there is that whole piece as well, like if we're talking about within the workplace. And I think that's like a huge part of it as well.
No, I agree, because I'm thinking it. I'm trying to be. I think I'm very more like empathetic in general as I've grown up. But like, if someone's going through menopause right now, like the emotions can be like this, depending on whatever your body is doing, right? Periods in general, again, similar kind of thing. How do we then get that more educated. I mean, we're just looking at it from the workforce perspective, but like even if we scale it down to school kids, when
Yeah,
kids,
that's a whole other thing.
that's like, it's a completely different can of worms there. But like all of these things right now, how do you start educating and create forms of support systems, as you said, for half the population right now, so that it's taken not just with a pinch of salt, but digested and absorbed and like becomes a real. I shouldn't say it's not a real thing right now, but it should be something that is at the forefront of everyone's mind, regardless. Like I worked in finance. We knew the calendar in regards to when it's a month end. So what that means is that when payroll needs to be done or when things all just need to be checked. But respectfully, I know every woman is different, but if it's kind of made very, very clear in advance that this time of the month or this time of the for instance, this time of the month, it's gonna be a difficult time for me because of X, Y, and Z or wherever it's menopausal periods. I reckon that could be an interesting thing, but I'm not sure whether or not it's something that would be looked at on a grander scheme. I feel like smaller companies right now or startups who are heavily focused towards well-being and stuff might be so into it. But it's sad for me to say. I don't know whether or not that would be circulated on a grander scheme of things. Because if so, why isn't it done right now?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Like it's hard to imagine a world that looks like that because we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But actually, like many, many years ago, like before colonization, all of those things, like every culture, whatever country you were from, your ancestors are from, like these practices were just the way of life. Like they were embedded, and then slowly through colonization, they've been lost in many cultures and preserved by others. So, like we're really lucky that in India, a lot of this has been preserved and so on. So, I mean, I don't have the perfect answer. I think education is a really big part of it, and people being open. Like a lot of men, like you mentioned the word period to them, and they'll just run away. Like not literally, but you know what I mean. Like it's still a taboo subject, to be honest. And I think, like that was the whole thing I had to go through as well. Like being online and just talking about periods. Like I was like, oh, what are people going to think? Oh, blah blah blah. Then I was like, I've just got to get over it because I know how important it is, and I'm trying to reach certain people and all of that kind of stuff. So the education piece is important, like starting from a young age, like you said, like in schools. Like I thought as well, like when I learned about all of this, like I wish I'd known that when I was teaching, like I could have imparted that wisdom onto the kids I was teaching in like obviously like a child-friendly way. And there are people out there doing so many amazing things for young people who are coming, who are starting to menstruate. Sorry.
And no, I do feel like for like relationship purposes, if you're trying to build something with someone right now, your girlfriend or your wife, and like you haven't got that understanding in regards to something that she never asked for, it's just part of her. It's just part of her DNA. Like those kind of things should be educated, in my personal opinion. When I try and think of it right now, like, but it baffles me that like it wouldn't be my first thing to just go and read up about it.
No,
So
of
how
course.
do you instill stuff like that so that it's at the forefront? Because again, like I always say, it's you never asked to be in the position you're in, and like it gets even more complicated when like people have irregular periods or people have really like painful ones. Or I think I don't want to just throw it out there, but there are people I know who have had it like quite frequently,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
it could be like a very, very dangerous place to be in terms of like their emotions. You and me, like I don't know what those cramps feel like at all. Like I can't even begin to think about it. But you have to go through this every month without asking for it, and then just have to crack on as if it's normal. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So why aren't we being a bit more on the easier side of things? And if we take it completely off tangent right now, and we look at the equality side of things in regards to within the corporate space, what men are able to earn, etc., and how they're able to progress versus women, it's like, yo, yeah, it's a big can of worms that could be opened up around that. So maybe there needs to be more educational stuff around this. I would be an advocate on trying to read more about it personally. Now after this conversation, like I would just have generally thought it's just part of women's DNA. They'll have a period. They'll then go into menopause later down in life. It is what it is. Unfortunately, it's not by choice. But when you try and deep it, there's a lot to possibly unpack in regards to, yeah. I when I speak to my clients, this is where it gets a little bit more like sensitive for me. It's like sometimes in life when you go through things, when I deep it in regards to their traumas that they've been through or their upbringings, and it's like we look at it 20, 30 years later and we're asking ourselves the questions like, okay, cool, you're still healing from that, but you need to go back and remind that younger version of you never asked for any of this. You were just a parent living present. It wasn't your fault your mum was like this or your dad was like this, or it wasn't your fault that you went to this school. It was just the cards that were dealt and you just played ball. You were so unaware.
Yeah.
You can't get mad at yourself for that, and we have to learn to accept and let go and heal from this. And it's like, if I try and deep it right now from a guy's perspective in regards to, let's say, the woman's menstrual cycle, yeah, no one's asking to go through all of this pain, you know? No one's asking to be the only one that can hold a baby for 9 months. No one's asking for any of this shit that comes with it. And it's kind of scary there isn't that much education around it.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think like another really important part for me is helping women and people who have periods to understand that it is actually a gift and that you can actually enjoy it. And like, whilst painful periods are really common, like it's not normal, like we shouldn't be experiencing so much period pain. And again, that's a very Western problem. It's less of a problem in the East. And that comes down to many things like diet and stress and lifestyle and all of those sorts of things. So I think there's also like that around it, like actually your menstrual cycle and like how you experience your period is telling you something about your body. Like maybe you've got an imbalance somewhere or whatever it is. And that's like a gift really that we have, that people who don't have periods, they don't have that. So every month it's like a cleanse, a check-in, like what's going on? How's my period? Is it super heavy? What does that mean? Is it really erratic? What does that mean? Like all of these things, as well as understanding like that it's like kind of like a creative cycle. Like there's so many different like frameworks, like I was saying, you can work within. So like seeing those gifts of it, because otherwise you're living with it for like 30, 40 years and you just dread that week or two that when it's coming. So there's a big like reframing piece around that.
100%. I like the way you've articulated like that, because I feel like regards to, and if I go back to childhood, whatever things you had to go through, treat it as the opportunity you took at the time. You wouldn't have been able to go through what you're going through now without having to go through X, Y, and Z. So, i.e., with your period, like if you can learn to find a way of making it, I wouldn't say an enjoyable process, but somewhat a less painful process. Or
yeah, I'd say enjoyable.
Okay,
I
fair,
actually really like being on my period now.
Fair enough.
Which I never thought I would say that. So yeah, it's possible.
Fair enough. No, but if you can get yourself into that mindset, then like yeah, it is somewhat like a gift. But out of curiosity, do you feel, because it's sad within the world that we live in, this is slightly off tangent as well, there is so much going on in the world right now, and we shouldn't like try and say, oh, this is more important than that, this is more important than that, hence why this doesn't get spoken about. Because I know education wise, and you're a teacher, and I had a teacher come in earlier this week talking to me about how mental health and well-being has changed at schools now than when it was, and it's great that that's now an impact there. And what I'm trying to get to is, if someone gave you the opportunity right now to walk into, let's say, a PwC, a KPMG, as an example, a bunch of men, and just start educating them, more specifically men, just because I feel like it's probably a topic that it will never cross their minds. Do you feel like there are ways where, or do you feel like there's a way where you could possibly get a message across for men to be a bit more aware of these things? And I'm not talking about just, I'm not trying to say like straight men. I'm talking about every man should be aware of this kind of thing. Do you reckon you could possibly do something like that?
Yeah, like definitely. I think I could. I think it's so important. Like I guess on like a much more micro level, like I've been able to do that with the men in my life, which I never necessarily thought that I would, because, you know, growing up, didn't necessarily talk about these things like with my dad, for example. And like I've got a little brother who's 16, like, and we're like, and me and my sister are so open with him. And it's so nice to see his generation. They're very different. So, you know, they're like the TikTok generation. And he's like, oh yeah, this influencer on TikTok was talking about this. And like period, like the pink tax and how there's tax on period products, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, like I was so proud of him. I was like, wow, like he knows about all of this. So I think, like, I know that's not quite answering your question, but it is really important. And I think it is definitely something that I could do. I think it's about understanding the people in the room and where they're coming from and making it relatable to them and helping it to be like, okay, how would this benefit them, or how would it impact their life? Yeah. Because otherwise people unfortunately aren't interested.
Because truth be told, like, we can try and make all the changes in the world right now, and you're going to have arrogant people who just can't be asked. And for whatever reason, they're stuck in their ways. And maybe it's rude for me to say arrogant. They are just possibly just stuck in their ways and don't see life in the same lens that I see life. And that's totally fair. But now, respectfully, I feel that there definitely are gaps in the market for this kind of education to be shared. And all it takes is a conversation like this, or someone to listen to it, to be like, didn't really think of it like that. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to why my mum does this, or why my sisters are like this. And all right, fine. This is how I should approach certain situations moving forward right now, so that not only am I being respectful in regards to whatever they're going through, but essentially I'm not causing any further pain that already might be there that they never really asked for. No, it's try and do it if you can in your own way. Like, I'd be an advocate. I'd come to listen to it. I've listened to this right now. I've been I initially, when I was speaking to you, I was like, okay, cool, how do I get more captivated by this? And all of a sudden something hit, and I was just like, yeah, gang, I'm intrigued a lot more. So
that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
I'm a very, very weird individual. Like, I get drawn into a lot of people and their stories and what they're trying to do, and I don't know.
I wouldn't say you're weird. I'd say it's just being open-minded, which is a good thing, you know. If only more people were like that.
Well, one can hope. Now, big thank you coming through today. How can everyone find you and get in touch with you?
So I am, my website is jyotirani.com. So that's JYOTIRANI. And then my Instagram is _Jyoti.Rani_. So yeah, those are probably the best two places. You can sign up to my mailing list. And I've got 4 free meditations. So there's one for each phase of your cycle to start to help you to really connect deeper to those. Look at my coaching program, Devoted. And yeah, there's lots of other cool things on there. Loads of blogs about yoga, menstrual cycles, and all sorts of things. So yeah, check out my website, definitely.
Mad. Well, big thank you. I'll put that all up on the screen on YouTube. And yeah, thank you for getting Unfiltered with me today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I reckon there's definitely more we could have unpacked. But I'm sure as this podcast grows and there's something, I will talk to you once I put this mic away. There's something that we could definitely touch base into in the future. But yeah, thank you for coming through.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Thanks again for listening. It's been your boy, Uncle Pre. It's always a pleasure to be in the studio and record with my guests. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. And if you like stuff like this, please do like, comment and subscribe. It helps me take the podcast to a place where I can definitely bring in more people that are going to resonate with you, whether it's their stories, whether it's their journey, whether it's just something that they're going through right now. So definitely like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, much appreciated you staying in here. I love everyone that comes through, and I love all the comments and feedback that I get, so keep that coming through. And yeah, it's been your boy Uncle Pre, and I'm signing out. Peace.